spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
We are all just wraiths in this carapace, apparitions in armor, hallucinations in husk, dust in the wind. How can we know ourselves? Know what's real? Know what this week's movie is on Max Mike Movies? Why, all you have to do is ask. We're in the beginnings of a new series, Whitewashing, where we explore Hollywood's attempts to sweep people of colors other than white under the carpet. Ghost in the Shell is the subject of this week's show, and it's a different kind of whitewashing. Yes, the main characters, Japanese in origin and as portrayed in the original anime movies and TV series, are here portrayed by white people, but this time, the white people aren't obviously trying to pass themselves off as another race. This is a different kind of whitewashing, more of a cultural whitewashing. And who are we to point fingers at Hollywood and say, booga booga booga? That over there, sucking his thumb and messing his pants, doing the hula hula dance, is Marvelous Max Levine. Say something.
I have to go change.
Don't change. We like you just the way you are. You and Lauren Tews. And I, who stick my head in gravy only to wash it out with bubblegum and send it to the Navy, am immature Mike Luce. I suggested a little drinking game last week. Watch the movie and drink whenever you hear them use the terms ghost, shell, and take a double when they use them both in the same phrase.
Yeah, I tried that. I missed half the movie because I passed out 20 minutes in.
I'm still reeling.
Yeah.
And I'll go over the results of that in a little later because it turned out to be a little bit more dangerous than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
By the way, Mike, did you read a new survey is out? White people voted best people of all. How about that?
You know, maybe we should stop our series right now since it's now official. Yeah. We'll be getting to the movie in just a mo. But first, we got some poll question to go over.
Yes. Yes, we do. Last week. Mm-hmm. Now you want me to take it, or you do?
No, I do. I'm hosting.
I'm seizing power. I'm totally hacking your cerebrum and taking over. I'm forcing you to say what I want now and doing cyber things.
Get your finger out of your nose and sit back.
Okay.
Cyber things. That's what he says every time he blows his nose. All right.
I cyber things. I cyber.
Does it hurt much? Right.
Yes.
Last week, we asked if there was a location you liked seeing used for movies or if there was one you wish they would use more. We got the following answers. From Val, longtime listener, first-time commenter, we heard, quote, "To me, this is actually a double-edged sword. I love Northern England and Scotland as movie settings. I loved seeing my hometown of Boston, or more specifically Waltham. Mermaids, anyone? On the other hand, being a Los Angeles resident whose neighborhood is used frequently for shoots, I wouldn't wish this mess and noise and parking irritations on anyone." Her assistant Stephen said he likes Chicago, end quote. Thanks, Val, but those Waltham scenes, yeah, they were a stand-in for Texas in that movie. So, besides, you didn't have to drive over all the damn cables on your way to work. Next, from the Great White North, we hear from Vince, eh? Oh, how's it going, Vince? Beauty. He says, quote, "As for places I'd like to see in film, like most people, anywhere I have lived is fun. Prague is a favorite, and in Montreal, they film constantly in my neighborhood, and it is sort of a drag," end quote. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Excuse me, I believe it's actually pronounced Pragui.
Go do cyber things.
Okay. Cyber!
Next, a newcomer, Susan Cassidy. Hi, Susan.
Hi,
Yay,
Susan.
She says, you can go ahead and open up that new Bumpy Bucks account, because you're new here. She says she'd like to see movies made in Star Island, New Hampshire, or the Isles of Shoals. I don't know.
Supposed to be just gorgeous.
Do you know, are those both in New Hampshire?
Yeah, I've never been to them, but I've heard about them, and they are just supposed to be gorgeous, and they're very wild looking, and actually they would be a really good setting for a whole lot of movies.
You hear that, New Hampshire? Bumpy Bucks coming your way. Okay, last but not least, we have Ned, who offers up, Ned, quote, "For locations, it's easy. New Zealand. Lord of the Rings spoiled me, as did the piano. It just seems to have everything and to have it better than most other places. Honestly, though, if it has good mountains, I'm happy," end quote. Yeah, that would have been kind of hard for Dances with Wolves, but oh, sure, mountains for everybody.
No, that makes sense. New Zealand's a gorgeous place. It's also not very large, so it's pretty easy to get around from one type of location to another.
How about you, Max? Any places you'd like to see more of in movies?
I'm afraid I'm more of a simpleton. I just like to see places that I've lived or spent time in.
Yeah.
Because, then I can stand up in the theater and shriek as I usually do. I know that place! That's why nobody wants to see movies with me anymore.
I'm here to witness that is sadly factually accurate.
Yep. No, really, yeah. I just really like familiar places. I don't know, in terms of the way things look. I go with Ned there. I do. New Zealand is gorgeous. But honestly, I really like recognizing places.
Yeah. And I would love to see Boston in movies. Sadly, mostly when they say it's Boston, it's not Boston. And the people who live here or have lived there just point and laugh. Because it's like, look, a street with more than 2 lanes.
Oh, look, a parking space. Nope, that's not Boston.
Yeah. Look at all them skyscrapers. There's more than 2. Well, that's... But, yeah, so...
There's the Minuteman statue out on the highway. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's have this car chase during the Hatch Shell concert, because that could happen. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for your answers. This week, we're giving out triple Bumpy Bucks. So, yeah. And don't look in your mailbox for that new Bumpy Hut catalog, because as soon as we print it, we'll mail it.
Yep, absolutely. What's the poll question for this week?
This week, what was a movie you saw that was supposed to have a big twist, but you totally saw it coming? Or what was a movie with a big twist that totally worked on you? Let us know your answers in the usual ways, as will be repeated at the end of the show. But for now, trivia.
The show.
And there's scant little of that. So, budget, $110 million, which is kind of slim for this kind of movie, I thought. However, a take of $170 million does not a success make. Oops.
That's why I haven't heard anything about Ghost in the Shell 2.
Funny that. 3 of the original anime voice actors, those for the Major, Batu, and Togusa, dubbed those characters in the Japanese release of this film. So, The director of the original anime not only had no problem with the casting of Scarlett Johansson, but said, quote, I believe having Scarlett play Motoko was the best possible casting for this movie, end quote. We'll be talking more about that. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, for those asking, that was not a wig. It was actual Johansson hair. Actual dyed Johansson hair. Look for yours at the theater of your choice. Big surprise, they cut down the lesbian love scene.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were surprised by that because,
Oh, yeah, that was a shock.
Yeah. While no location is actually stated for the movie, it feels like it's supposed to be Japan, except it was shot in New Zealand. Hey, Ned, you win. And a lot of Hong Kong was digitized for the slum areas, so that. In Japan, audiences actually gave this movie better ratings than the original 1995 anime.
Seriously?
Seriously. We'll be getting to that. All of the cars in this film were carved entirely out of cheese. It's a fact, and there
what?
wasn't a lot of interesting trivia this week. Yeah. Cheese. It's coming around the corner.
Disclaimer, no cars in the movie Ghost in the Shell were made out of cheese.
Sorry, Tennessee. Do you know any trivia about this film?
Nope.
I mean, literally, there were things like, the Major's suit, that suit she wears, it was made from silicone. Okay.
I know that apparently one of the other people who was considered for the part of the Major was Margot Robbie.
Yes.
Famed Asian actress.
Yes, famed.
Blonde, blue-eyed, famed Asian. Yeah.
I mean, and it at least, and here's the weird part, at least Scarlett dyed her hair black, which I can't tell, is that an attempt? What is that an attempt at? I don't know. I think the Major's hair is actually purple, but there you go.
Yeah, well, she has some blue or purple highlights in her hair.
And that was actually meant to reflect that from the out. Again, that's as exciting as the trivia got. The hair color, ladies and gentlemen, hair color. Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. So the plot. Yeah. Okay. I'll give this a shot.
Strap in.
Or on. The Major is a brain in a case, which is where we get the title of the movie. Caught in a terrorist attack, her body was not salvageable, but her brain, kept safe, was placed in a robotic body. While disorienting at best, she is the first successful brain transplant after, they saved Hitler's brain, but that's
That's another movie, yeah.
Good thing she's a cop, as she's now superpowered and stuff and can totally go after the bad guys. Her first task is to investigate a tip. Someone in a very high-class hotel in futuristic somewhere is at risk of being cyber hacked. Not the way Max does it. in this
Cyber!
In this future, many people are cybernetically enhanced. While this gives them advantages, it also makes them vulnerable to beings such as the mysterious Kuze. Ooh. Geisha robots at a high-level meeting suddenly take out security and hack into the brain of a high-end official of Honka Robotics, the very same people that put the Major back together. Unable to stop the attack in time, the Major finds out enough to know that someone or something new is on the scene. When she tries to hack into one of the robot geishas, she meets this Kuze and finds herself powerless before him. Just able to get out in time, she pursues him. Kuze seems to be systematically killing off all the high-end scientists at Honka. But why? Perhaps he, too, is a specter in the casing. As the Major seeks this new enemy out, visions continue to haunt her. Places and people that make no sense to her flash in and out. As she gets closer to Kuze, she realizes that she's been lied to in many ways. She was not a cop that went down in a terrorist attack, but a rowdy teen that was taken in a police raid and used in experiments to make the first human-brained robot. As she gets closer to the truth, more and more things explode. Kuze becomes more and more clear, making more and more sense. Kind of. Until finally, a confrontation with the true villain and a spider tank bring the story to an exciting, thrill-packed conclusion. The Major knows who she is now, and she and Kuze must continue. And if only we knew how they were going to do that. The end.
The lowdown.
Right, so.
So many questions.
Many questions.
I do want to point out a couple things. As Mike said, this is a live-action remake of an animated movie from 1995.
Yes.
This predates The Matrix
Yes.
by several years, and you can really see the influence of the original on The Matrix. And I believe the Wachowski siblings have said it was one of the influences of the movie. And boy, you can see it in the original. Not so much with this, I don't think.
Yeah. If only this had come out before The Matrix, you could say that the Wachowskis just said, oh, here, let us take that from you and show you how to do that, because that's not good. But before we even get to the whole cultural inappropriateness of this film, and we usually save this for the end, but that's not what we're talking about in this series. This is not a good movie.
No.
And I've seen this a few times. Like, I saw it when it came out in the theater, and I have a copy of it because I hate myself. I do. I have it on the background and stuff, but I haven't actually sat and watched it since the theater, and I'd forgotten how bad this film. Some of my notes include things like ham-fisted, all surface and cool and no substance. So
yeah, now we have seen many movies that are worse. This isn't necessarily an awful movie. It's just kind of dull.
Yes.
Which is strange because, it does look pretty good, or parts of it. Okay, Scarlett Johansson looks really good. And
and hey, if you liked Blade Runner, you're going to love this because pretty much that's all there is,
Yeah, this is Blade Runner without the interesting subtext.
Right.
It
actually has it's supposed to have some of the same subtext. Right?
It is. It's supposed to be addressing what does it mean to be human?
Right.
What does it mean when you blur the line between human and machine? And they kind of tell you that's what the movie is going to be, but they don't show you that at all in any way.
No.
Even a little.
In the opening scrawl, it talks about man versus machine, and then they utterly miss the point of the original story, which was not about man versus machine. It was literally what Max just said. Where do we draw the line when technology gets to a point where you can literally take somebody's brain and nothing else and put it in a robotic body? Is that person not human? Because when they make her, and there's a lot of experiments that have gone bad. I think there was they said there was 98.
98, and that wasn't including Kuz. Oh, no, maybe it was including Kuz.
Yeah, it was. So they finally get it right, but their first thing is, cool, we saved her. She's a weapon. They don't even, the people who did it don't consider her human. So apparently she can feel and has senses. Of course, she's got better ones than we do. Although the only one they really even kind of allude to is her sight. And even then, it's only because one of her cop buddies has to have his eyes replaced. And he tells us what he can see. And he just says, I can see probably like you. And her entire answer is, uh-huh. That's it. We don't know anything about what it's like to be her. So before we even get to the cultural parts, it's like every time this movie gets close to examining its own premise, even if it's not the one that was originally in the comic or the anime, it turns away and does some big dumb action sequence instead.
The sequence you referred to that was cut short, there's one where she basically picks up what I think is a hooker.
Yep.
And takes her someplace. I don't know if that's her home cubicle or what. We're never told. And is just wants her to touch her face. Mm-hmm. And she wants her to describe what it feels like. And I'm wondering, does this mean you don't have tactile senses? Or does it just mean you don't know how to interpret them? And then the scene just goes away.
Right, because that bothered somebody. Because they did film it. There was actually quite a bit more, and they apparently got a little bit more hot and heavy, which would have been fine.
The sexualizing of it wasn't the problem. I thought that was a really interesting... It's like, oh, wow. Now we actually get to see, how does she experience her body? How does she experience other people? Does she need companionship? Does she derive comfort from... Nope, apparently not. We're not going to know.
No. The only thing we kind of know is in the opening when they first waking her up, she starts gulping air, which of course makes me wonder, why does the robot need to breathe? I don't understand. Now, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, we're going to show this so that when Scarlett Johansson is breathing throughout the film, you don't go, hey, she's a robot, why is she breathing? But that's honestly the only reason I can think that they have her gulping air. So whatever. But yeah, my feeling is that when she said, what does it feel like? Is that she can't tell if this feels the same way as it did to her before or not, because her memories are gone. And supposedly that part was damaged in the attack. You can't see me doing air quotes, but I'm doing air quotes. And then she finds out, oh no, there's actually a secret, super secret, fudgy chocolate fortress background that they're not telling her about, which becomes the point of the film, which really doesn't matter, because really all that matters is, where is that line? Is there a line? And if there is one, why are we drawing it and based on what? What about in Blade Runner? They were even different because they were manufactured humans, but they weren't robotic. They were made out of tissue that just had been cultured and genetically grown or whatever. And it's like, well, how are they not people? Because somebody else made them. Well, technically everybody makes other people. It's just they do it biologically instead of scientifically. But that was the whole point of the film. And they actually dealt with it, especially at the very end. There is a great... If you haven't seen the film, there is a great, mostly improv speech from Rutger Hauer. And he's telling you, it's like, this is the stuff I've seen. This is the stuff I've experienced, just like you. And just like you, when I die, it all goes away. There's no difference. And he's left with a very confused Deckard trying to figure out what's going on, because at that point, I'm not sure if Deckard knows what's going on with him either. But this film just is like, bring in a robot. It's cool. Okay.
They keep setting up. And now, the original anime... I don't know how much it dealt with it either, with that same subject.
It did a lot.
It's way more... It's not like they all talk about it, but it's so ingrained in the story in that movie. It's part of the atmosphere. It's part of everything. It's much more of a thing. And it's all surface. The whole movie is all surface.
Yeah, and there was actually some of the parts that, when I started doing some research, that told me I found things I was not expecting at all. Because I, of course, when they first announced that they were going to do a Ghost in the Shell live action movie, fandom in this side of the world was all like, yes, we love this, do it. And then they said, starring Scarlett Johansson. And everyone was like, you got to be kidding. Why are there not Asian people in this? And to be fair, there's a couple of, B. Takeshi's in there. I forget the guy who plays
Mr. Aramaki is Japanese.
Yeah.
Who, for some reason, is the only character in the movie who speaks Japanese but can clearly understand English.
Yeah.
Why is he speaking Japanese?
And what I found was that a lot of the upset people were people on the Western side of the world. The reaction from the Japanese people was not what I was expecting. But one of the things that people were talking about, and this is again, there's somebody I found, her name's Monique Jones, and she has a blog somewhere, but I found some interesting stuff from her. I got a quote from her that helps understand that Johansson might actually not be the problem. It might be that the movie was not made by Japanese people. Who stars in it is less important than the ideas and deep culture that was intrinsic to the original story. And I have a quote from her. Quote, Japan's heritage is one that's thousands of years old, and quite a lot of Japanese culture, in terms of monuments, places of worship, and buildings that had been in place for centuries, were wiped out in the blink of an eye at the end of World War II. How does a country wrap its mind around losing a huge chunk of its identity by creating a largely artificial one in its place? End quote. So that is one of the main reasons that the original anime and manga were made. None of that is expressed in this film, and so it misses that part. Also, as it turns out, after World War II, Japan not able to they were demilitarized, so like all of this, industry and stuff that was aimed towards the military, it's like you can't do that because we told them they couldn't. So Japan started making toys, among other things, and it was obvious that the figures that looked Japanese weren't selling, so they started slowly erasing their own features from toys, and as it turns out, from their culture.
Oh, wow.
One of the most popular remade things from Japan during that time was the Kewpie doll, which was something that was popular in the 1920s. It was a carnival giveaway.
Yeah.
And it's this little round-headed baby figure with big eyes. And that, as it turned out, was something that was very popular in Japan because of what they were doing. It was copied and, of course, sold. And, of course, if it's making money, then we're going to do it because, our economy is in the toilet.
Is this why so many characters in, Japanese animation don't look Japanese?
Yep. Disney films were hugely popular, and they influenced the manga of the time, especially for Tezuka Osamu, who came up with Astro Boy and Kimba that we would know.
Oh, yeah.
But tons of other. He's basically considered the king of manga.
Yeah.
But the big round eyes started happening in the 40s, and they started moving away from visual interpretations of their own people until it became the thing. And eventually, what would happen is that Japanese culture would just start borrowing all over the place and just literally not care. Like, it did not matter to them. And if you play things like Castlevania on PlayStation, the main character of that, the main villain is Dracula, right? And there's a lot of German and British characters in that. Now, German and British, some of them have blue hair, some of them have pink hair, some of them have green hair. But it's like, and look at Super Mario Brothers. They're supposed to be Italian. This is not strange to the Japanese. For them, it's just like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. Yeah, he's Italian. So it's really what I found, at least when I did my research, was that the things that were really more important in this case were that all of the cultural reasons that this thing was made in the first place, the things that it was reflecting just aren't there. They aren't touched. They aren't dealt with. They're utterly absent from this version of the story.
This brings up a really interesting point. Is this a case where we white people are getting upset over cultural appropriation where the culture itself that is being appropriated isn't upset?
Well, funny you should mention. One of the things I found was a video where somebody went to the streets of Japan after they had announced who was going to be playing the Major. And they asked people on the street, what do you think? And the general reaction was, let's see if I have some quotes here. One random woman who didn't even know what whitewashing was, they had to explain it to her, said, quote, I think this is better than hiring a Japanese actress. Yeah, it will look more anime-ish if the actors aren't Japanese, end quote. Another young man said, quote, she was chosen for her skills, so that's just the way it is, end quote. Another comment, quote, if she was Japanese, she wouldn't look like an anime, end quote.
Ooh.
A very telling comment regarding how anime characters often have characteristics like blonde hair and blue eyes was said by a young man who states, quote, anime are just fiction, so I don't understand why people criticize it, end quote.
Wait a minute. Are we being racist by being upset by this?
I don't know.
My God.
It was really, really weird.
That's...
Now, there was another person I came across. I believe he's a Chinese American. Don't quote me on that. His last name is, and I'm going to get this wrong, is Tsuei. So Tsui. His name is John Tsui. He works for Image. He's born in San Francisco. Again, his heritage I don't know. In particular, I know it's Asian. He said, quote, "The Ghost in the Shell manga came out in 1989, the first film in 1995, an era when Japan was considered the world leader in technology." He then tweeted, "Everything hot in that era came out of Japan. Cars, video games, Walkmans, all of that. Japan was setting a standard. This is a country that went from poised to conquer the Pacific to forcibly disarmed. They poured their resources into their economy, and as a country that was unable to defend themselves but was a world leader in tech, it created a relationship to tech that is unique. Ghost in the Shell plays off all of these themes. It is inherently a Japanese story, not a universal one," end quote. So he was...
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This wasn't what you were expecting, was it?
No, this is a whole other angle to this I didn't even consider. And I got to think about what that means, what that says about me.
Well, I'd actually, if you don't mind, what were you thinking when you were approaching the show before you had to watch the movie? Because I know you didn't like it either.
No.
What were your thoughts on this? And even after having watched the movie, what are your notes about this?
Well, I thought, again, it was a question of appropriate. I was thinking, like, wow, my first note is, wow, the credits are the most Asian thing in this movie. Because they're done in calligraphy, and, you know, it's... and the fact that, like, oh, wow, look, there's like 4 Japanese people in this movie. There's one who speaks Japanese. I will say they gave him the hair that looks like the character in the anime. I like that.
He honestly, always to me, he looked like, I do not know why I have this hair. Can you tell me? Okay, maybe later.
He did kind of act like the hair was kind of a passenger.
Yeah.
But, except he was also, I wanted to see more of him because he was really cool.
I kept expecting him to just sort of say off to the side, "Is it still there?"
But he was one of the most underplayed characters. He was very, a lot of the rest is very over the top. But I don't know. And part of it also, I was always conflicted. I think Scarlett Johansson is awesome. I think she is an amazing actor. I think she's terrific. Yes, I also happen to think she's just stunning to look at, and we get to see her in a lot of very tight outfits. But that's just gravy. Just listening to her talk. Hell, I think one of the best things she ever did was a movie we talked about before, which was Her, where it's her voice the whole time. You never see her.
That movie came into my mind a lot watching this because that film actually dealt with the subject matter.
It very much dealt with this subject matter, and it did it much better. And in this movie, she's really trying, but it's very clear that they just kept telling her, Scarlett, take it down. Well, how much? Take it down to a -5.
Have you ever worked with George Lucas? Would you like to?
Okay, Scarlett, I want you to think wooden. And the thing is, she's not good at wooden. She's too expressive. She's too good. So the character of Major still has some empathy. You still can sympathize with her. You don't know what the hell's going on.
No.
And some of the stuff is very shoehorned in. I don't think the whole thing with her meeting her mother is in the anime. Is it?
To be fair, it's been a while since I've seen it, and I don't remember.
But
this was not a remake. This was basically they took things from other stories, but this was not like meant to be the original film made into a live action. It was like they whole clothed it. Yeah,
apparently, like even the villain or technical villain Kuzue is an amalgam of like 4 of the villains from various series. There've been a bunch of movies and TV series, and
I think there is a Kuze in one of the movies, but it's not the exact same thing. They actually deal with a lot of like I don't watch a lot of anime. Honestly, a lot of it seems to me to be very repetitive, and some of the tropes are the kawaii just drive me insane. Like I can't stand them. But
some of
this
that
one,
is culturally centered. We have, American
Sure.
animation has its own tropes that annoy
Sure.
people. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
But there's actually some really interesting stuff. My partner, actually, this is like his favorite anime. And there's lots of it. There's like 3 different series and 3 different movies or more than that. And there are times when you find they deal with the whole what is human, what's not human thing that involves regular people, like that weren't trying to be part of cyber anything.
Cyber.
And they get stuck into it, and their reactions usually are not what you'd expect, and they try to examine this as best they can. But of course, they're doing it from a cultural standpoint of, being Japanese, which makes sense because they are. And here, I think there's a culture like yogurt has a culture, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of the trappings are there. I mean, part of me, I'm going, oh, of course they've got geishas because this is, but that's in the anime. There are robo geishas,
Sure.
which I have to admit, visually look really cool.
Yeah, and that would have been something that they could have explored. So they sniff at this idea in Blade Runner 2049, which if you've got that film confused with this one, I totally understand why.
Yeah.
I got it confused and was so glad to see it's like, oh, I thought this was like 2.5 hours long. It's only an hour 47. Awesome.
Yeah.
But like, what happens when you start and this is happening now. What happens when you start making humanoid, for want of a better term, love dolls? And what happens when you start being able to program them to react? Where is that line of sentience? Where is that point where you've made something basically to serve as a sexual slave that does have the ability to think? So those geishas, I think it's pretty obvious that they were meant very much not to be of that level, not only because of which, for some reason, they were clockwork, which steampunk for reasons I don't understand.
Yeah.
But like that could be a movie in and of itself.
There are movies that deal with that. There's a movie. It's really well done. It's disturbing. I don't know how much play it got, called Ex Machina.
Oh yeah.
With Alicia Vikander, and that's terrific. And it deals with the idea of machine sentience and the idea of basically building sentient sex toys.
What I liked about that film is that usually when you see robots, high-end robots of various, and I'm not talking about Star Wars, although Star Wars, we still have to have a talk about the freaking droids.
Yeah.
When we see robots in things, it usually is that, oh, now they go crazy and they're evil and they'd want to kill everybody. Ex Machina takes things in not a dissimilar path, but a more interesting one. Because I don't want to give that part away, but I would say that it's definitely worth seeing. If you want to watch movies that have to do with the idea of sentient machines or AI or stuff, and they explore it, go see Her and go see Ex Machina. Don't bother with this. Because it's such an interesting subject.
Or watch the original anime of this.
Yeah, and they just don't deal with it. But again, so Max, the whole idea that you were coming, that there was the casting that was one of the problems.
Yeah.
So had you heard anything or scoped anything that led you to say, yeah, this is still a problem, or that's what the reason that this film did badly or whatever?
I did know that there was a big outcry against it, and a lot of people were complaining about it, although now that I think of it, all the ones I saw were Americans.
Yeah.
All the people who were screaming about it. Yeah, I mean, that was the main thing I came at. I also remember thinking, and I admit I think this about a lot of movies in this situation, why are you bothering? What is the need to make live action out of animated movies? I'm looking at you, Disney. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, I don't get it. Maybe, and again, if you out there listening can explain it to me, please do. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just personally, I don't understand it. I don't see the need for it when if the animation, say, was bad, and you think, this would have been a really good story if it had been done with live action, okay, you can make that case. But the Ghost in the Shell was a story that was done very well with the animation.
Well, I actually recently read a big, long article online about this. It's a very stepped, nuanced, detailed theory about why they do this. And it took me a while, but I finally was able to boil it down to one word. Money.
There's a shock. Well, yeah, that's kind of the obvious one. I assume that's why Disney does it, because that's why Disney does everything.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's fear too, right? Because, and of course, I made that whole article up. There was no article. But I lie all the time, so why should you be any different?
Everything I say is a lie, Norman. I'm lying to you right now.
But if you're lying, then you can't be telling the truth. But if everything, yeah. The other is fear. And Max and I have talked about this, especially when we went back to ancient history, the 90s. We found that things were so much more experimental then. You could actually like make a movie like, and of course, to be fair, this is 80s, but you could make a film like Terminator. Somebody would give you money and say, yeah, take a chance on that. And look what happened. And all Hollywood seems to have learned from this is make that again, make that again, make the thing with the money. And so, Disney's like, well, why come up with new ideas when we look at all these films we can remake? We already have the scripts and everything. It's great. I have personally not seen a single one of the remake, or even the ones that are like live action daddy issue films for villains, right? Because Cruella, I don't care.
Hey, I hear Cruella's actually pretty good. I haven't seen it, but I've seen a number of the live action remakes, and most of the time, I think without exception, all they do is make me think, I got to go home and watch the animated one again.
I saw like one clip from Lion King. I was watching a Lindsay Ellis. I'm going to drop her name. I was watching a Lindsay Ellis video. She just posted about how maybe Little Mermaid wasn't as bad as she originally thought it was.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
And she shows in there, and one of the clips she has is from the quote-unquote live-action Lion King, which isn't, because the whole thing's animated, so I don't even get that.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was a point where, what's his name's mother is calling out, because I think Mufasa's about to be died.
Kimba's mother? I'm sorry, Simba's mother?
And see, for me, I don't see the connection, but whatever. And it's just the lioness screaming, like, look out, Simba, or whatever. And I was like, wow, they have sucked all the magic out of even that.
Yeah.
It's just nothing there. It's like, I don't need to see real animals singing or a real lion eating bugs. Like, I just don't need that. I don't get it. As for this, I think if it had been an auteur, let's say if it was the Wachowskis, who are big fans of Japanese comics and anime and stuff, if they had said something like, the reason we want to do this is we want to bring this to a bigger audience. Most people in the United States don't know what Ghost in the Shell is. It explores some really cool themes, and I think they're worth talking about and worth making. We have the ability to make a big budget film that will be seen by more people. Sure, that might have been probably a misguided, but at least reasonable attempt.
That's a point. And there's also the point about reaching a wider audience is there are a lot of people who just won't see animated movies. They just aren't interested in them. They don't like them. That's okay. That's a reasonable position, but it's true. A live-action movie would reach a wider audience.
Yep.
But the idea, of course, I suppose that does come back to money. Of course, they want to reach a wider audience. That's more butts in the seats, more tickets sold.
Yeah. And, and we sit here and we talk about the fact that the culture was just utterly misunderstood. Like, really, the two pieces of Japanese culture we get, besides I'm sure there was some signs in Japanese, whatever, nobody cares because they're just in the background. That's just the Blade Runner part. They go to a Yakuza club and they have geishas, so that's all we get.
We see a pagoda once.
Okay, sure. Like, I don't even see anybody having some yakisoba or anything. Or, something like... Japan has a very rich culture, not least of which in food. I love Japanese food. We don't even see that. And we've got, I don't know, it's just like they don't even try. They literally don't even try. But be fair, that's actually the theme of this film. They just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very by the numbers. I mean, right at the beginning, when you see Cutter, who's the evil, I have it written, the evil corporate boss dude. So corporate, so evil. It's like... It's basically, hello, I'm a cliche. I'm two dimensions. If I turn sideways, I vanish.
Oh, and by the way, yeah.
If all he needed was a white cat and a mustache to twirl.
Come on, Flopsy.
Yeah, pretty much. My God. so many of the characters in there are just either have no personality or they're complete cliches. Now, the sad thing is there are some things in this movie that are, that aren't terrible. I like the scene with the Major's alleged sort of mother, Mrs. Kusanagi. That's actually kind of touching.
Yeah.
Where it turns out, because she goes to visit the mother of the person whose brain she has, basically.
Yeah.
Which again raises is that still her mother? Is she the same person? And they don't touch on that, except at the end it's like, oh, Mom, I'm back, It's like,
all she really says is you don't have to go to the grave anymore. You don't have to go to your daughter's grave anymore.
The implication, I think, is that the mother realizes or knows that it's her for some reason. She goes, oh, yes, my daughter looked like Scarlett Johansson. Although, I'm sure every mother thinks that. But.
She actually... So what happens is she's given an address. She's given... go to this address and you'll find out about your past. Cool. So she goes there. She sees a cat... Best actor in the movie. No offense, Scarlett, but you're not given anything to do. She sees a cat. The cat likes her. She picks it up. The mom comes out and she says literally, oh, you remind me of her. And it's like, really? How?
Why?
Because, whatever.
Yeah. By the way, the cat, that is once again a thing clearly taken from the Matrix or by the Matrix because, again, a glitch in her mind is represented by a cat.
Oh, yeah.
Just as a glitch in the Matrix is represented by seeing a cat twice.
Well, and here's something else that you just brought up that they could have done or touched on or whatever. If there hadn't been the glitches with her memory, which is only there because of the plot, otherwise it doesn't matter, would that, is that any less a real person? This goes back to the whole Blade Runner question, because the Blade Runner, the replicants in Blade Runner were given human memories to make them more stable, but they were given real people's memories. Yeah. So when Rachel finds out, it's like, oh, it's Tyrell's niece. That's like, I didn't learn to play piano. She did. But that's just the basis. What she does with those and how she reacts after that, does that make her still Tyrell's niece or is she another person? Yeah. Is that less real? But they don't deal with that. They just was like, I must find Kuze and we must beat evil bad guy. So... And I'm going to disagree with you that Scarlett Johansson's really good in this, and it's not her fault. There's literally nothing. No,
there's nothing to do. There's nothing for her to do except look good in a skin-tight bodysuit.
Yeah, and for those of you who like to look at that sort of thing, she fills the suit very nicely. But the only thing we know about that character is what the mother literally tells us in a line of dialogue near the end of the film. But none of the characters, we know nothing about any of them. I remember Batu's name. I know nothing about him except until he has his eyes replaced, he's happy that he's not enhanced.
I gotta say, we've been focusing on whitewashing. There's a strange sort of that whole sequence where he gets his eyes replaced. I think I'd be curious to know what anybody who's had an actual prosthesis feels about that, because he's just like, oh yeah, I got my eyes burned out and I got new ones.
Yeah,
I got these cybernetic ones. It's like, really? You weren't traumatized at all by the fact that you now have had your body parts replaced with synthetic, and by the way, very clearly synthetic. They look like two gun barrels, which I assume is intentional.
Yes, well, that's how they looked in the original anime, too.
Yeah. Again, it's a cool look, but it's like the next scene. Like, yep, I got these, and I got special vision powers, and... I'm not upset by the fact that I just lost an integral part of my body and had it replaced. It's nothing. I mean, especially when you consider the plot they're trying to do is the Major trying to come to terms with her robotic body.
Yeah. And this is actually where my research started. Speaking of the robotic body, the first quote I saw about Johansson's casting was from Oshii Mamoru. He was the director of the original movie. Yeah. And he was fine with Johansson's casting as the Major, as the Major's name is not her original, and neither is that her original body. Yeah. For that reason, he stated that, quote, there is no basis for saying that an Asian actress must portray her, end quote. And that's where I was like, wait, what? Where does this go?
I suppose that's fair.
So, Max, I'm going to point this question to you.
Yeah.
And this actually goes to the very core of this whole series. Do you and I have a right to point this finger? I think it's important.
I think, that's an important question. I'm not sure. I don't know if we have a right to point a finger, but I think we have a right to bring it up.
Yeah.
And to be aware of it. Mm-hmm. And to actually look at it, because, maybe I went into this thinking this is whitewashing, this is cultural appropriation. Maybe this isn't. Maybe I'm seeing tigers where there are shadows.
Well, I think the point is that what we thought was the whitewashing part turns out not to have been the whitewashing
Yeah, maybe
part.
it wasn't the character. It's the fact that they, as you point out, there were heavy Japanese cultural elements in this movie that got erased.
Yeah.
So it's not the people, it's not the characters, it's the setting, it's the movie itself.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing they didn't do that they could have done and would have made this, for me, 10 times worse, since there are so few people that are supposed to be Japanese in this movie and or Asian descent. I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. At least they didn't make Cutter Japanese, because that to me would have just made it like, oh yeah, we'll hire the villain. He'll be Japanese. That'll be good. See, we included people, because that's what happens, right? Is so many times in the past, if you had somebody of Asian or black or whatever descent, they played the villain or the funny sidekick,
The comic relief. Yeah.
So at least they didn't do that. But this film, it ignores its heritage. It ignores the culture that actually caused the story to be written in the first place, and it ignores its own premise. Instead, it gives you splody, splody, splody.
Yeah, it just becomes an action movie. And the sad thing is, for an action movie, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, my last note was dull.
Yeah, the action isn't that interesting to watch. Even the fight sequences tend to be very brief.
Yeah.
The whole fight with the spider tank just doesn't engage. And admittedly, all through it, I keep thinking, spider tank does whatever a spider tank does.
Well, and here's the thing. I think they were called Tachikoma in the original anime,
okay.
and they were characters. Like, there was one Tachikoma that followed her around in a number of episodes, because it was a shell too, right? So, all right, I should have done this earlier.
That doesn't come across in this.
No, it's just like, we need to have the spider tank or they'll be pissed. Make a spider tank. So I should have done this earlier, but for those who don't know, ghost equals human consciousness.
Right,
Shell
or soul.
equals, except that they never use that word, although it's a perfectly good synonym.
Julian,
and by the way, the
doctor
results for the drinking game were 12. Yes, they use ghost, shell, or ghost in the shell 12 times in the film. I was actually not drinking, because otherwise I would have said 50,000 points to Griffin Puff. Griffin Puff wins. Up yours, Snape. But I didn't. So yes,
that was another odd piece of casting. The doctor, who is sort of the maternal figure for it, is the French actress Juliette Binoche, who again is a terrific actor, and has one or two scenes where you get the look, she's starting to do something. Nope, we're done.
Oh, let's kill her. She almost emoted there.
Yeah. Hey, you don't get to perform. Stop that. Stop having a personality.
But yes, the shell is whatever holds that consciousness, be it flesh, robot, or other. So part of the idea, I think, is that aren't we all just ghosts in the shell? Dust in the wind, blah, blah, blah.
Just rats in a cage, yeah.
Dust, wind,
dude.
And that would have been much more. But instead, what we get is a scene that, again, could be from The Matrix, or to be fair, they did it in the first Matrix film. We get this scene where suddenly we're watching two garbage men eat their lunch, and they might as well just go, I'm a robot now. Because that's kind of what happens. And they're going to go kill Juliette Binoche, because she was one of the people that was part of the team that made the Major and Kuze, and it would take a scientist to explain. And they get to the point where they can ram their garbage truck into her limo, and then luckily they jump out and have Uzis, and one of them has an invisibility cloak.
Because you need that collecting garbage. Well, must be a really dangerous route.
So, and I wrote after this movie does have style. It's just everybody else's. It's not even its own thing. And there's no substance under it. Even the villain is Cutter. Yeah. Spoiler. Like, you can't tell that from the first set. She's not a person. She's a weapon. Yeah.
But Kuze is supposed to be the one we're focused on, and he's really uninteresting. And also confusing.
Yeah.
He keeps, at the end, part of the story is come with me, we will evolve beyond them. Come with you where? Where are you going? Are you going into the internet? Are you going to become porn? Which is what would happen if you entered the internet. I'm sorry. You would either become living porn or cat gifs. You'd be a sentient cat gif.
And see, this is something, again, that the movie Her not only tackles, but tackles well. Because we talked about this, and if you didn't hear that episode, by all means, go back and listen to it. Or watch the movie, or both.
Yeah.
But what happens is the AI assistant, basically because they move so much faster than we do, the AI assistants evolve, and they're like, yeah, we're leaving. We kind of don't need you anymore.
Yeah, they ascend. They achieve the singularity, whatever that, which can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, so why couldn't, like that, because we see this point where Kuze is making his own network of Buddhist monks, I guess, that...
I don't know what that was supposed to be.
Is that where, like, you get jingles for commercials or something? Does it go somewhere? Does it house anything? Is it a collective I don't know. And then when he, quote unquote, dies, spoiler, but honestly, you want us to spoil this film, does he die? I don't know. Like, maybe he went to this place or to this network, or he seemed to have things pretty well planned out until that point. But, then again, he was played by the same actor who played Johnny Gnosis in Hedwig and the Angry Inch. So, how much planning can you do when you're Johnny Gnosis? The only thing I can conclude is, at the end, the moral is, we were Japanese, now we are white people, I guess. So, yeah. But we should probably... do you have any more notes you wanted to get to? The film is just bad? Or...
No, there are one or two visual things I kind of liked. At one point, the Major interfaces with one of the geisha bots and tries to look at its memory, and she's seeing like 3D representations of what was seen, and they're falling apart. They're disintegrating. I thought that was actually a really nice visual representation of data degrading. I just liked that one moment. I thought that was kind of cool.
So there's your half a star, huh?
Yeah, that's the half a star. I also remember when they're showing her, on the operating table, which they love to do, and they love to show, her with the skin off or the skin on.
Yeah.
And I'm going, why does she have toes? We see one of her feet, and one's robot and the other is human, and she has no detail, no body detail below, except above her head and her hands.
Right.
Which is like, all right, that makes sense. That'd be really difficult to do. Why does she have toes? And at another point, she's sleeping in her underwear. I don't know why. And she has skin. Her legs are not that weird silicone. Why? Where did that come from? Can she turn on skin tone when she wants to? It's not clear. And the whole idea of her body not looking human, it kind of fits. It was always a very interesting thing in the anime, and it tries to be interesting in this. The idea that nudity doesn't bother her because her body is largely desexualized. Except in this, it's very sexualized.
It's like, well, here's the thing. I can make an argument for toes. I can even make an argument for the breasts. I mean, we know why the breasts were there. The argument I could make is that the assimilation between the human brain and a robot body would be easier for something that it's fully, it remembers and it's comfortable with. So I could make that.
At least has the outward shape.
Yeah. I think what would be interesting is that once you got used to it, once you're in there, like what if the ghost in the shell, if you will, at this point was actually one of the scientists, and they're like, cool, I have made this assimilation, I'm in this robot body, how would I change this? What would I like to be different? And I would think, being a creative person and a mechanically apt person, you might then just start redesigning stuff because you could. And if you had the resources, why would you have just one body? Well, today, it's raining, so I'm going to go out in the body that's covered in silicone so I don't get wet. Today, I'm going to be parachuting, so I'm going to go for the light frame body. Why wouldn't you do that? And would you be less human at the point that the technology had got to that level? Because I think that's part of the thing you don't even touch on here is that as those things change, people accept it, more and more of the people accept it more and more. And who's to say that at some point, that's just how people are? They spend their whole lives this way because, hey, who wants to break an arm or get a disease or put an eye out with a jart or something? This way it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
And then maybe we even start after that. We don't even bother making the baby brain anymore. We just who knows?
Yeah.
But that would be interesting. That's why it's not in this film. Anything else?
Nope. I think we can wrap it up.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up.
The roundup.
So
Mike.
Let's play
Every time.
Max Mike volleyball. All right.
Yep.
So this, because of the research I was able to find, this did not end up at all the way I was thinking. How do you feel about the stuff that I came up with, that it was all about culture and not so, to the Japanese anyway, not so much about who plays who?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing. I feel like I completely missed the point. I mean, it's really interesting, and I'm going to have to think about this, but I think that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I hadn't even thought about the idea of, why would the anime characters don't necessarily look Japanese? Why am I upset that the live action character doesn't look Japanese? But it does make sense that it erased the themes of the movie, not just the setting and the style, but it took away some of the essence of it. Maybe that's why this feels so much more hollow than the anime does.
Yeah, it has nothing to base itself on. Yeah. I did not get the answers I was expecting. Like last week's was obvious. It's like, okay, Sir Alec wants to be Japanese for 30 seconds, but he refuses to listen to anybody who is Japanese tell him how to do it. Okay. And we're going to have this nice Catholic woman pretend she's Jewish. Not do a horrible job, but she's not. So she doesn't have any of the gravitas. In this film, it's like, oh, Scarlett Johansson, she's not Japanese. And oh, the average Japanese person on the street doesn't care.
It's also interesting because, majority of one was 1961, where just that sort of people were just starting to talk about things like this. And this was done 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it's cultural appropriation more than it is whitewashing.
Yeah.
And I think here's the weird thing. This particular story is troublesome only because the point of the story is supposed to be that the outward shell doesn't matter. So in a way, we did kind of get angry at the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anybody pointing something out if it leads to conversation. That to me is the important part. So where it does make, I'm sure both of us at some point were like, should we be doing this series? I feel all uncomfortable. It needs to be talked about. It doesn't matter who talks up. The woman that I quoted earlier, and I got to look her name, Monique Jones. She's not Japanese. She's not Asian. She's black. But does it matter that she's black? No. She brought up an interesting point. And she actually, there's a bunch of other stuff in her article. She obviously has studied Japanese culture and is very interested in it. So it doesn't matter. And in this case, it really does lose something by having its Japanese cultural core removed from it. I think I don't understand that. Well, maybe I do. Would I care if I went and saw a Japanese production of Othello? I probably wouldn't.
Oh.
And I think that the big difference is here, thankfully, Scarlett Johansson didn't have her eyes taped back, didn't switch her R's and her L's, and didn't shuffle around,
She wasn't trying to pretend to be Japanese.
No.
Yeah.
And the movie was trying to pretend to be good, I think.
Honestly, I think the greater offense of this movie is it's not a good movie.
Yeah. And sadly, the way it's filmed, if it had been Japanese actors in every role, it wouldn't have made it any better, which is weird. Now, other anime, like if you had done films like Akira, which is specifically tied to Tokyo and Japanese people, and made it all white people, that might be a big difference. But this one, because of its theme, it turns out to be just, for me, it was actually a lot more interesting to approach this film than I thought it was going to be. So there you go. But we have some business that I need to take care of before we finish up and find out what travesty we'll be watching next week. So we have that poll question, which if you've already forgotten what it is, we were talking about twist movies. So have you seen a movie that has a big twist, but you totally saw it coming? Or have you seen a movie that had a big twist and you were blindsided and it worked great? Either one of those, let us know. And the ways you can let us know are varied and wonderful. Well, they're buried.
Yeah.
You can email us at maxmikemovies.com. Be the first. That's a hint.
Well,
because nobody else has given us answers to the poll questions to the email address. I think we did have one person email us once. And of course, we did get email from that nice man trying to get us to watch Rogue Warfare 3. Aha! It's been too long. Yep. So there's that. You could also find all of our episodes at our website, which is maxmikemovies.com. And hey, even if you're just looking for some movie suggestions, great place to scroll through because there's 48 choices there that we give you.
Yep.
Some of them good, some of them bad. Showgirls, I'm not looking at you. You could find us on the social media of your choice, as long as that social media is either Facebook or Twitter. You can find us on the podcast app of your choice, which at this point, I don't even know the list, but you know how that works. You know how that works. But yeah, so answer our poll question. This week, it was a surprise. We got triple Bumpy Bucks. So next week, and you know, that new Bumpy Hut catalog might be coming soon with all the Bumpy Hut wonders in it. But Max,
yes,
we're continuing this series of whitewashing. What film have you pulled out of somewhere for us to watch?
Well, this one I think is a little less complicated than the one we just saw. Also, probably this is not one a lot of people have seen, because seeing this movie is a bit of a challenge.
Is it?
This is a movie called The Conqueror. It is about the great Mongol warlord, conqueror of Asia, Genghis Khan. And it is played, of course, by, when you think Genghis Khan, you think John Wayne.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
John Wayne.
You mean True Grit?
Mongolian actor John Wayne. And no, this is not John like J-I-A-N. This is the Duke playing Genghis Khan.
Rooster Cogburn, and he conquers all of Asia.
Yes, he does. And this movie, by the way, as we will discuss next week, is notorious for other reasons as well. But yeah, we're going to talk about John Wayne as Genghis Khan in The Conqueror.
So tune in next week to see if John Wayne can conquer your heart in this Chinese or not Chinese epic.
Yeah. This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.